John Wayne collapsed at 6:47 inches the evening on the 3rd of October, 1978. Not on a movie set, not in a hospital. In the green room at NBC Studios in Burbank, California, 30 seconds before he was supposed to walk out and tape The Tonight Show. And Johnny Carson was the only person in the world who saw it happen. What the Duke did next, pulling himself up off that floor, straightening his Western jacket, looking Johnny dead in the eye, and saying 4 words that would haunt the host for the rest of his life, became the most sacred secret Johnny Carson ever kept. For 8 months, he told no one, not his producers, not Ed McMahon, not his wife. For 8 months, he watched John Wayne appear in public, shake hands, laugh for cameras, sign autographs, and perform the role of American legend with such terrifying commitment that Johnny sometimes wondered if he had imagined what he had witnessed in that green room. He had not imagined it. The Duke had collapsed. And the reason he collapsed would have broken America in half if it had come out that October night. So Johnny kept the secret. He kept it through the winter. He kept it through the spring. He kept it all the way to the morning of the 11th of June, 1979, when his phone rang at 4:52 inches the morning, and a nurse at UCLA Medical Center told him that John Wayne was gone. What happened between that green room floor and that phone call is a story about the most American thing there is. A man who refused, with everything he had left, to let the world see him fall apart. And the friend who loved him enough to let him have that. If this story already has its hooks in you, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from, because this one is going to go places you do not expect. Let us go. To understand what happened that October evening, you need to understand what the year 1978 had already done to John Wayne. Because by the time he walked through the NBC Studios front entrance that Tuesday afternoon, carrying that familiar, weathered confidence the way other men carry car keys, the Duke had already been through more than most men survive in 3 lifetimes. The stomach cancer diagnosis had come in the spring. His doctors had delivered the news with clinical precision and almost no comfort the cancer was advanced. It had spread from his stomach into surrounding tissue, and the surgeries required to slow it would be brutal. Wayne had sat in that doctor's office for a long moment without speaking. Then he had asked one question. Not, how long do I have? Not, is there treatment? He had asked.
Before we continue our video, I'd like to say something. I often see comments from people who didn't realize they weren't subscribed. If you enjoy the channel, please take a second to check and make sure you're subscribed. It's free, and it really helps us keep the show growing. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.
Whether he could still make his scheduled appearances. The doctor had stared at him. The Duke had stared back. They both understood. The answer was not yes. John Wayne made his appointments anyway. The lung cancer battle of 1964 had already established his template for handling illness. He had lost 1 lung. He had come back. He had made more films. He had won the Academy Award for True Grit in 1969 and delivered a speech that had the entire theater on its feet. He had beaten the body's rebellion once with sheer refusal, and somewhere inside his extraordinary, maddening, magnificent stubbornness, he believed that what had worked once might work again. What he could not yet admit to himself, and would not admit until that green room floor came up to meet him, was that this time was categorically different. The cancer that had taken 1 lung had been, in its terrible way, contained. This was not contained. This was systematic. This was the body moving against itself in every direction at once. And no amount of John Wayne's particular brand of willful momentum was going to change the arithmetic of it. Johnny Carson had known John Wayne since 1962, when the Duke made his first Tonight Show appearance and accidentally knocked over the entire desk while demonstrating a fight scene from his latest film, and spent the next 40 minutes doing an interview while seated on the studio floor. Because the desk could not be righted in time, and neither man had wanted to stop the conversation. The friendship that developed over the following 16 years was the kind that rarely exists between famous men, built not on mutual publicity or professional obligation, but on genuine regard. Wayne respected what he called Carson's surgical honesty. Johnny admired something in Wayne that had nothing to do with any movie he had ever made: a quality of absolute self-possession, the ability to walk into any room and simply be exactly himself without apology or performance or the slightest apparent awareness of what he was worth. For a man like Johnny, who spent his professional life expertly performing a carefully calibrated version of himself, who understood the distance between the public man and the private one better than almost anyone alive, Wayne's unself-consciousness was something close to miraculous. They had dinner together half a dozen times a year. They argued about politics with the honest ferocity of two men who trusted each other enough not to pretend Wayne was further right than any direction Johnny wanted to travel, and neither of them was shy about it, and neither of them let it threaten what they had. They talked about their fathers. They talked about Nebraska and Iowa, and what it meant to come from places where no one gave you permission to be soft, and where that early scarcity had shaped them both in ways they were still discovering at 60. And whenever Wayne appeared on The Tonight Show, which by 1978 had happened more than 30 times across 16 years, there was something in the air between them that the cameras caught without being able to name it. Two men who had built public lives so enormous they sometimes could not find themselves inside them. Two men who recognized that condition in each other with the immediate, wordless recognition of people who share a dialect no one else speaks. Two men who, in 16 years, never talked directly about any of that at all. Hit subscribe right now, because what happens next in that green room is something you are going to want to have seen from the very beginning. Drop your location in the comments. This community is building something worth being part of. The 3rd of October, 1978. The Tonight Show taped at 5:30 inches the evening at NBC's Studio, 1-inch Burbank. John Wayne arrived at 4:15, which was early even by his own considerable standards. He came in through the side entrance the way major celebrities always did, signed in with the security desk, exchanged a few words with the guard who recognized him, and tried, with limited success, to keep his face neutral at how thin the Duke looked in person. In the photographs, it was still possible to convince yourself it was just the angle, just the lighting, just the particular way a very large man who had spent 60-plus years in the physical world could sometimes appear diminished by a camera lens at a bad moment. In person, the weight loss was harder to dismiss. The photographs had been lying by omission, the way photographs of famous men in decline always do, because the people who take them and publish them are never quite sure how much truth their audience can absorb. Johnny was in his dressing room reviewing index cards when the stage manager knocked and told him Wayne had arrived. That was unusual. The Duke typically appeared 90 minutes before taping, worked the room, had coffee in the green room, and did not need a single thing from anybody, least of all, managing. Being here at 4:15 with the show not until 5:30 meant something had shifted. Johnny set down his cards and walked down the hall without stopping to analyze the instinct, because 16 years of reading rooms had taught him to move on instinct first and analysis later. The green room at NBC Burbank was a narrow, well-lit space with a long couch along one wall and a low table with coffee and water and whatever catering the production had arranged for the evening's guests. John Wayne was sitting on the couch when Johnny arrived. He was sitting very straight. The way a man sits when sitting straight is costing him something. His hands were on his knees. His face, when he looked up, was the wrong color, not pale exactly, but wrong in a way Johnny had never seen on it before. A kind of grayness behind the surface that had no name but that Johnny recognized immediately as belonging to the category of things that should not be ignored. "You are early," Johnny said. He kept his voice easy, his tone level, because 16 years of reading people had told him this was not a moment for alarm or commentary. "You are early, Duke." Wayne smiled. That crooked, slow smile that had carried 100 movies and made 100 million people feel that the world was more manageable than they had feared. "Wanted to make sure I had time to settle in," he said. Big night. Johnny looked at him for a moment. Then he sat down across from him and did not say anything. That was one of Johnny's particular and rarely acknowledged gifts, the ability to create a silence that made people feel held rather than pressured, observed rather than interrogated. He sat. He waited. The fluorescent lights of the green room hummed their single indifferent note. What happened next took about 4 seconds and will stay with you longer than that. John Wayne leaned forward slightly, as though he intended to stand up, his body listed to one side. The coffee cup on the table to his right tipped over and rolled toward the edge, and Wayne's hand shot out and caught it. Those reflexes, still there. The reflexes of a man who had been physical his entire life and could not quite stop being physical no matter what else was happening, but the motion of catching it put him off balance, and he went down. Not a dramatic fall, not the movies. A slow, almost dignified subsidence toward the floor that Johnny caught with both hands about halfway through, dropping to his knees without thinking, getting his arms under the dukes before the man's shoulder hit the carpet. They ended up on the floor together, Johnny kneeling, Wayne half upright against the couch, both of them in the particular silence of a room where something enormous has just occurred and has not yet been named. Wayne's eyes were open. He was conscious. He looked at Johnny with an expression Johnny would spend the rest of his life trying to accurately describe something past embarrassment, past pain, past any register he had a reliable word for. It was the expression of a man who had just been caught being mortal, who had spent decades building a persona that existed in some deep and complicated way, in opposition to mortality, the screen presence that implied certain men did not simply deteriorate, that the arc of heroic American masculinity bent toward triumph rather than surrender, and who had just had that persona interrupted by the plain, unglamorous, uncinematic fact of a body that was no longer cooperating. Neither of them moved for what might have been 10 seconds. "Do not," Wayne said. His voice was quiet, completely steady. "Do not call anyone." Johnny looked at him. "Duke." "I mean it, Johnny." His grip on Johnny's arm tightened. "I mean every word of it. Do not call anyone. Not tonight. Not after." Johnny held the look. He could feel the weight of what was being asked, not just the practical request, not just the instruction, but the full architecture of the thing beneath the instruction. He understood it the way you understand something you cannot yet articulate. He nodded. "You will keep it?" Wayne asked. He said it the way a soldier says something, flat, direct, no adornment. "I will keep it." What you have not heard yet is what John Wayne said next. The 4 words, and they are going to stay with you long after this video ends. Keep watching. John Wayne sat on the floor of NBC Studios' green room for 11 minutes.